So the New York Times has a smear piece against Zohran Mandami that involves his college application. Now, I gotta say this. White progressives, we need to have a conversation because I'm noticing that many people are willing to jump to Zoran's defense about this application. I want to remind everybody that I've worked in the university system for over 10 years in admissions and as a college advisor. I have never had this happen. And I have worked with a number of international students. So I've worked at MIT, I've worked at Boston University, I've worked at Harvard University very briefly. And I can tell you again, this has never happened with an international student. So I want to be very clear about that. And I also want to say this. I think it's very important that people understand that two things can be true at the same time. So while you're very quick to jump to his defense, I want to make it very clear on this show, what Zohran did was wrong. And yes, this is a smear piece. Again, two things can be true at the same time. Let's go ahead and get into it. What's causing this big uproar here? It's this piece here that was published in the New York Times. Mandami identified as Asian and African American on college applications. So let's go ahead and get into this. If you guys don't know, again, Zohran Mandami is running for mayor of New York City. He beat Andrew Cuomo in the primary, and it looks like he's on his way to win the general election. So you are going to see smear pieces about him, but this speaks to something. Let's go through this. As a high school senior in 2009, Mr. Mandami, the Democratic nominee, claimed another label when he applied to Columbia University. When asked to identify his race, he checked a box that he was Asian, but also Black or African American, according to internal data derived from a hack of Columbia University that was shared with the New York Times. So first and foremost, student records should not be hacked. But here we are. Columbia, like many elite universities, used a race-conscious affirmative action admissions program at the time. Reporting that his race was Black or African American in addition to Asian could have given an advantage to Mr. Mandami, who was born in Uganda and spent his earliest years there. Now, for the record, he was not admitted into Columbia University, for those who are wondering, but let's continue here. In an interview on Thursday, Mr. Mandami said he did not consider himself either Black or African American, but rather an American who was born in Africa. He said his answers on the college application were an attempt to represent his complex background, given the limited choices before him, not to gain an upper hand in the admissions process. Again, it goes on to say that he was not accepted into Columbia University. Let's jump in here for just a second, because I'm going to show you the application. So first and foremost, I can't believe I have to say this in 2025, but here we are. African American refers to Black Americans in this country. And everybody knows that. And for people who are saying, well, he was applying from another country, again, I have worked with international students for over 10 years. They have not done this. I've gone through thousands of admissions applications. They have not done this. I have never seen this happen in my 10 years of working in higher education. Even white students that came from Africa did not check that box that Zohran Mandami checked. And I'll show you what that looks like in just a second. So let's go on a little bit more here, ladies and gentlemen. Most college applications don't have a box for Indian Ugandans, so I checked multiple boxes trying to capture the fullness of my background. The application allowed students to provide more specific information where relevant, and Mr. Mandami said that he wrote in Ugandan. So again, I have he basically, you'll see it where there's a line where you can add more information, and he wrote in that he was Ugandan. So again, he made it very clear that he is not Black. He does not identify as Black. So just keep that in mind. Even though those boxes are constraining, I wanted my college application to reflect who I was. While neither Mr. Mandami nor Columbia University could provide the template for the application form the college used at the time, a copy of it was archived online. Mr. Mandami said he filled out all of his college applications the same way. So let me just click on this here, because we do have the archived college application. Let's see if it'll let me go down here. So here's the application right here. And I am so sorry that this is tiny, but we're trying to do, let me see if I can zoom in a little bit more here. Okay, so let's go down to citizenship here. You guys know how that works. And here's the part right here. So look at this part here, ethnicity, race information. So this is where it says the information below is optional. Please respond to questions 1 and 2 for governmental record keeping and reporting requirements. So it asks the typical questions that you see. Are you American Indian or Alaska Native, Asian, Black or African American, Native Hawaiian, other Pacific Islander, white, right? Okay. So let's scroll down a little bit more. Then it gives an option for additional information. Columbia attempts to draw students from diverse ethnic and racial backgrounds. This section will allow you to tell a little bit more about your background as identified above. Please further self-identify yourself as a member of one or more of the following groups and add specific information where relevant, such as tribal affiliation or country of origin. Now, check this out. This is what the university did. I wish I could close. It doesn't let me close this pane, but this is what the university did. Check this out. Black/African American. So they're asking you to identify tribal affiliation or country of origin. Now, here's the thing about this. First and foremost, they already know what your country of, I don't know how many ways to say this, but at the time, if your address is in Africa, they're going to see where your address is. They're going to see where you live. But what I think is very important, because people are pointing to this and they're saying, well, it asks for his country of origin. But if you notice, it says Black/African American. It does not say Africa. Does everybody get what I'm pointing to here? So what it does is it makes it very clear that African American refers to Black. That's why it says Black/African American. It is not referring to someone who is from Africa, but they are not Black. So let's say it was someone that was born in Kenya and they are Black. They would probably check this box here, Black/African American. You see what I'm saying? There's also a spot here for other, and I believe that's where he wrote in Ugandan right here. And then, of course, it has tribal affiliation. So this is something that I want to point out, because like I said, you have to be fair. Number one, how is this different from what Elizabeth Warren did? How is it different from Elizabeth Warren claiming that she was Native American and then later on, years later, saying that, oh, whoops, sorry, turns out I got the DNA test back, or, you guys know those little DNA tests they do. I got that back and it turns out I'm not actually Native American. Because there are certain things at that time that are given towards said groups. Like, we don't do that type of admissions process anymore because it was overruled by the Supreme Court a couple of years ago. But at that time, when Zohran was applying, there still was affirmative action in college admissions. So this is the part that I push back on when people continue to say, well, he was from Africa, so he was just saying he was from Africa. But if you look at the application, it says Black/African. And he said he wrote here under other Ugandan. I get it. I understand it. Again, not to say it was malicious or not, but the point is, I have never had this happen with an international applicant ever. And we have had students that have come from Africa that are not Black. We've had white students come from Africa and they have never checked that box. And that's what I want to bring home to people. So just to be clear, now that you've seen that application, Now, you know, right? I would also add, I don't even know why the university has two sections for that. I mean, like I said, when you're an international student, they know you're an international student. They know that when you apply. So that's something I want to say here. Now let's go back to the article here, because he said he filled out all his college applications the same way. The Times could not find any speeches or interviews in which Mr. Mandami referred to himself as Black or African American. And Mr. Mandami said the college applications were the only instances where he could recall describing himself as such. Right. So he made it very clear he does not consider himself to be Black. So this is another thing that people will point to when they say, well, you did this for the college applications, but outside the college applications, you were not referring to yourself that way. That doesn't help Zohran Mandami, because what that does is it makes it seem like you were using that for admissions purposes. I said the same thing about Elizabeth Warren. And also, I said the same thing about this guy, because I told you, we don't have no heroes. No heroes on this show. When Dr. West took that money from Harlan Crow, I called it out. And he gave that money back, but I called it out. When Jill Stein took the position she took on Syria, I called it out. There's no stand-in on this show. You have to hold politicians accountable. This reminded me of Mindy Kaling's brother. Remember Mindy Kaling's brother? When he did this whole project, he said, I faked being Black to get into med school. Does everybody remember this? Right. So he did this whole project where he checked on his med school applications that he was African American to see if that would help him get into med school. Because I guess when he wasn't checking that, it wasn't working out that way. But this is Mindy Kaling, the actress from The Office. A lot of people remember Mindy Kaling. She's pretty funny. Her brother, he did this project where he checked that to get into med school. So I have a difficult time believing that Zohran Mandami didn't really understand this. I'm just being honest with you guys. I have a difficult time believing that, considering I've worked with international students for quite a long time. And I see a lot of people jumping to come to his defense. And I want to give you another example. So for example, my sister, I told you guys before, was born in Germany. Her parents are Black. Obviously, I am Black. My sister does not get to check that she is German American on applications. My sister is not German American, even though she was born in Germany. She is still African American. That is a term that is used to describe Black Americans here in the United States. And honestly, this is the reason why some Black Americans don't like using that term anymore. Because of the fact that people are like, well, Elon Musk is from Africa, so isn't he technically African American? No, that's not what that term was for. And I would think people would know this by now. But because it's a politician and it's someone that you like, I feel like people are trying to make excuses for it. And I have to send this message again to white progressives. You guys, you really sometimes, you really need to take a step back and just listen to what Black people are saying sometimes. Because I feel like the whole progressive movement, when we tried to tell you things about, listen, so-and-so needs to have a Black agenda. There needs to be an agenda for Black Americans. Universal policies alone aren't going to cut it because there's the equity issue. I feel like that was dismissed and it was called divisive. But we have sat back and we have watched some of you, not all of you, we've watched some of you choose and pick which groups that you want to prioritize. And when you decide to do that, it's not considered to be divisive. It only seems to be an issue when the word Black comes up. All of a sudden, don't talk about that. Don't get into that. And this is honestly why, and take note on this. This is honestly why you don't have more Black Americans that are part of a progressive movement. This is why, because we're not listened to. And honestly, it's disrespectful. It really is disrespectful. So this guy here, for example, he said Zohran Mandami's ancestry in Uganda traces to the 1800s when the British Empire brought over 30,000 Indian laborers to build the Ugandan railway from Mombasa to Lake Victoria. The idea that he can't include Africa in his identity is absurd. Americans need to understand the rest of the world finds their identity politics completely hinged. unhinged. It's interesting. He says our identity politics is completely unhinged, but then he proceeds to mention how he should be able to have said identity, right? We all know that, again, in this country, African American refers to Black Americans in this country. We all know this. And if this were the case, then people like Elon Musk could have put this on his college application and maybe he would have gotten some type of affirmative action treatment. Like, we all know this, right? Dave Matthews doesn't go around telling everybody, hey, I'm African American and all. Like, come on. How far are people really going to take this? So this is what I'm talking about. Again, now, is it a smear piece? Yes. Yes, it's a smear piece. I don't understand why more white progressives can't just say what Margaret Kimberly said to Zohran Mandami. African American means Black descendants of people enslaved in this country, but I am more concerned about the New York Times cutting a deal with racist hacker who also access other people's other personal information, also to smear Mandami. Fuck the New York Times. Why can't people have this same approach that Margaret Kimberly has? This is what I'm talking about. Two things can be true at the same time. Yes, it's an obvious smear attempt, and we'll get into who the source was in just a second. Obvious smear attempt. Why wasn't this revealed when Zohran Mandami ran for state assemblyman? Why wasn't it revealed? You know what? Why wasn't it revealed then? Because it wasn't so much of a more important position, right? Like, New York City mayor is a big deal. Like, you're talking about the biggest city in the country. Like, that's a big deal. Why wasn't this revealed when he was running in the primary? Why is this information only being revealed now after he won the primary, right? Ask yourself that question. Now, let's get into who this source is, because I thought this was very interesting there, ladies and gentlemen. Check this out. Anyway, the guy the New York Times agreed not to name in exchange for hacked materials was already outed as a white supremacist by The Guardian months ago. Let's get into it. Jordan Lasker, aka Cremu, one of the speakers at the conference, is billed under social media alias Cremu, but The Guardian has corroborated that the account is apparently run by Jordan Lasker, a longtime proponent of eugenics. That account has been boosted or engaged with dozens of times by that platform's proprietor, Elon Musk, often on the topic of falling birth rates. So, yes, ladies and gentlemen, the New York Times, the so-called, I would call New York Times pretty liberal, the so-called pro-Democrat liberal, outlet, worked with a white supremacist to get this story. It wouldn't be the first time that outlets and networks have done this. It would not be the first time. There have been stories before. I told you before about how David Duke would jump in and give some said endorsement against a candidate that was more progressive, or more, I guess you would say, left than the centrist candidate like Hakeem Jeffries and Charles Barron, in order to slow that person's lead. That has happened before. So you see what is at work here. They are really trying to find a way to stop him. Margaret Kimberly also comes in here. New York Times worked with this guy on their Mandami hit piece, but he's a racist eugenicist and it's blowing up in their faces. And that's the account right there. He said the New York Times just reported on the story. Using the hacked data from Columbia, we found that Zohran Mandami claimed to be Black when he applied to Columbia. So there you go. There you can see that account is admitting that, yeah, they were the source. They were the source. So do you see this? Ethnic group code B, ethnic group description, Black, non-Hispanic. Again, he said he does not identify as Black. And so this is the New York Times response here. As the New York Times assistant managing editor for Standards and Trust, I've received reader feedback regarding our reporting on Zohran Mandami's 2009 application to Columbia. To provide context on how the reporting came together, I just want to share some information. So here we go. The Times has been reporting comprehensively on Mr. Mandami's proposal for the city. His vision on the economy and affordability, his leadership record, his personal background, including his biography and South Asian heritage that he's talked about on his campaign. Times journalists for decades have done deep reporting on major party nominees for New York mayor to provide insight, context, and texture about their priorities, history, and evolution. Our reporting helps readers better understand how candidates think and what they believe. Our reporters obtained information about him and went to the Mamdani campaign with it. When we hear anything of news value, we try to confirm it through direct sources. Mr. Mamdani confirmed this information in an interview with the Times. He shared his thinking about the limitations of identity boxes on forms like Columbia's and explained how he wrote Uganda in the country of his birth, the kind of decision many people with overlapping identities have wrestled with when confronted such boxes. We believe his thinking and decision making laid out in his own words was newsworthy and in line with our mission to help readers better know and understand top candidates for mayor office. We sometimes receive information that has been hacked or from controversial sources. The Times does not solely rely nor make a decision to publish information from such a source. We seek to confirm through direct sources, which we did with Mr. Mamdani. Sometimes sources have their own motives or obtain information using means we wouldn't, like Trump's taxes, WikiLeaks, or Edward Snowden. It's important to share what we can about sourcing, but we always independently assess newsworthiness and factual accuracy before publishing. So you see, this is them here now trying to come back and say, well, we didn't know that this person was a white supremacist that we received the source from, whatever. Like, the New York Times has been terrible, terrible, terrible. You can look at their reporting on Gaza and you can see this as well. Anyway, the thing here is this. As a Black commentator in this space, I'm not going to sit up here and tell people what's going to make them comfortable. There are plenty of white commentators that you can watch to give you that. But it is important that I say this, and I say this here very clearly. People have to understand, once again, African American refers to Black Americans here in the United States. I will say this again. I have worked with international students for years, and they have never done this, including white students that came from Africa. So whatever Zohran's, whatever this was, whether it was intentional or not intentional or whatever, like I said, I have a difficult time believing that. And again, I want to tell you again, he is a politician. Politicians are going to give you a politician response. He's not going to say, well, yeah, you're right. But I was trying to get into said school. No one's going to say that. Just like Elizabeth Warren wasn't going to say that. So just keep that in mind. And all I can tell you guys is, yes, there are going to be a number of smear pieces that come out about him. That election is in November. That being said, Zohran is claiming, it seems like he's claiming accountability here. It seems like he is saying that he does not identify as Black and da-da-da-da. But the thing is look, it's disrespectful to Black people. Now, do I think this is going to stop him from possibly winning in November? No, I don't. He won the primary without a large portion of the Black vote. So I don't think this is going to stop him from winning. But I have to say this, like, for the people who are jumping in to rush and defend him and again, I get it. You like him. You want him to win. I totally get that. But just because you like a politician doesn't mean you can't criticize them. It doesn't mean you can't hold them accountable. And oftentimes I saw this with Bernie Sanders, where people didn't want to critique him because they liked him so much. I saw it with Barack Obama, where people didn't want to critique him. I see it with Donald Trump, where people don't want to critique him because they like him. These people are politicians first and foremost, and you have to remember that. Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.